Hello, acolytes, and welcome back to After Plague. I am so happy to be back, and I'm so happy to be showing you this painting. It's one that's taken me a very long time, but I'm very proud of how it turned out, and I hope you'll like it as well. I started working on this painting in December of 2023, and now it's February of 2024. So I've definitely been working on this one for a while, and it took me about 25 hours in the actual Procreate app to complete. It's inspired by the Ophelia painting of John Millais. I'm sure you've maybe seen it sometime in your life. Here, I'll pop it up on the screen for you. But it depicts Ophelia's death in Hamlet, and it's always been very ambiguous over whether it was an accident or whether it was a suicide. I'll read you the actual description of her death, and I'll let you make your own conclusions. So this is Gertrude speaking in Hamlet. There on the pendant boughs her coronet weeds, clamoring to hang an envious sliver broke, when down her weedy trophies and herself fell in the weeping brook. Her clothes spread wide and mermaid-like, awhile they bore her up, which time she chanted snatches of old tunes, as one incapable of her own distress, or like a creature native and endued unto that element. But long it could not be, till that her garments, heavy with their drink, pulled the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death. This is at a point in the play where Ophelia has lost a lot of things. She's lost her father, he's dead now, and her lover has been extremely unkind to her. She doesn't really know what the future holds, and she's basically gone mad. And so I wanted to convey a lot of that feeling, the madness, like the inability to bear what's going on in her world, and lean a little bit into a gorier aspect. As I was rereading some scenes from the play, I almost wish that I had done her as, this is also part of a triptych, I should say that, of a see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil set, which we do often see. I almost wish that I did her as the hear no evil character. At some point it's mentioned something that someone's saying is like daggers to her ears. And so I feel like I could have also done that to portray it, but I don't know, I really like the eye imagery, especially in the water. Now, to actually talk about the piece, which I haven't been doing at all, I started out painting her hair mostly because I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted it to look like. This very fiery red against the greenish sort of background, the warm tone against the cool tones, really draws your eyes straight to her head, as well as flaring it out, keeping it loose and floating, I felt like would add to the illusion that it was in the water. I did struggle for a while with how to paint her face and her skin. I tried a bunch of different techniques, and then eventually I went for like this almost ultra painterly style, and I really like it. Also, you might notice that her mouth is horribly misaligned. I fixed it. I can't believe how badly it was misaligned. But I fixed it and it's fine. And I do really like this very painterly style. It's got a lot of blue tones in it, which I feel like pulls her skin further into the background, and that's really something that I appreciated, that it balances that out and it sort of makes it a bit more cohesive. It looks like the water is reflecting onto her skin. It was a pretty steep learning curve. I did it on her face and her neck, and then I tried to do it on her arm, and I totally forgot what I did. I was like, how did I make it look like that? So every time I switched to a new part of her body, I had to relearn what I had done. And I feel like overall it ended up looking cohesive, it ended up looking fine. It's definitely not a realistic painting style. It's very semi-realism, it's very painterly, almost an illustrative painted style, which I really like. I might do it again. It took me a long time to figure out how to do it, so now that I know, maybe I can do the others in the triptych in the same style without running into these issues. We'll see. I've also been really interested in eye theming recently. I feel like I've drawn a lot of stuff that has eye themes. I think I just really enjoyed drawing them, and I had a really good time filling in the irises of these eyes. I feel like if you look at them closely, there's a level of complexity that I really enjoy. There's like they're not quite a solid blue eye. That's not what I wanted to go for. I wanted to do blue eyes with this very like hazily center, almost yellow, and I really like how complex they look up close. Unfortunately, you can't really see it in the full image, but I really like the close appearance. The legs took me forever. I worked on the legs themselves for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, because I couldn't get them to look correct, and I was definitely just hyperfixating on them because they looked fine. And then I worked them, and then I worked them, and then I'm like, they're overworked, and then I pulled back, and then I did it again. It was all just drama. Originally, I had filled in all of the background lily pads as a much brighter, more vibrant green because I thought that would be very intriguing. And then I was like, it's not the right vibe for this piece. I can't make them blend together, so I wound them all back into this more blue-gray. And of course I added in all of the leaves and the foliage there as well. These lily pads and the leaves and the background elements took me so long. I feel like they all turned out really, really well, but one of the main things that frustrated me was trying to figure out a way to do the lily pads where they weren't so complex and detailed that they pulled away from the rest of the image, but not so simple that they looked out of place or too illustrative. I spent quite a while doing these like little flowers. I'm not sure what exactly they are. I was seeing them in a lot of references of like places that had lily pads, so I'm wondering if maybe they're how the plants in this kind of water reproduce. They have their own like pollens and seeds. I think they're fine. I don't know ultimately how I feel about them. I'm glad they're there. They break up the water a little bit, but I do think maybe they're too small. In my original sketch, I had the larger flowers that you usually see alongside lily pads, and in the end I just decided I didn't want them there. Because the background was already looking so complex, I decided to pull back and not include those in the final illustration. I don't think I've ever illustrated a piece that really invited the viewer to look so closely like this one did. There's a lot of little details, but at the same time I do feel like the overall looks good as well. When you step back, it has a decent sense of balance, especially within the color, which is something I'm always struggling with. That's why I don't do very much digital painting, is because color balancing is quite hard, but I really do feel like they balanced out quite well. These eyeballs, I had a pretty easy process for making them look round. I'm a little worried that this went too far and now it's gross. I don't know. I feel like it looks good, but I know that other people might think that I've ruined it by going a little bit too gory. And of course, I had to add the blood stains on her mask. I feel like it finishes her face, right? Because we're missing the eyes, and the eyes are such an important part of the face. I really do feel like it was necessary, and so I'm not as annoyed about the blood. I don't know. I would love to hear your opinions on whether you think this piece was better before I added some of the more gory elements, or if you like it the way it is. These lily pads were frustrating to me beyond belief. I was in tears trying to figure out how to draw lily pads, because everything I was coming across was either too detailed for what I wanted to do. I was like, there's 80 lily pads here. If I do this, I'll be here for years. Or it was too simple and it didn't suit the rest of the vibe of the painting. So I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried, and I'm driving myself crazy. And eventually I come up with a few lily pad shapes that I like, and they're on the simpler side in comparison. These first few that I did, they're too complex, and so eventually I do a couple kind of simple ones. You can see I took a break from doing the lily pads because I was so frustrated and ended up painting in the water. I made sure to add some areas of higher contrast, especially in the corners, so it's almost spotlighting the center, the figure in the illustration. Of course, I put shadows under all of the lily pads, all of the branches, her hair, her arm, that kind of thing. And I used a set of watercolor brushes because I felt like it would really give the water this rippling surface and this like sense of depth. I really liked using these watercolor brushes. I should use them more often. I just find them difficult to work with, but I really, really love the end result whenever I use them. It was a pleasant break from working on the lily pads, but eventually I did get back to them, and I found a way that I liked of actually drawing these lily pads that didn't feel overly complex while still creating some level of dimension. And so I did that by creating one half that was darker, one half that was lighter, and then from the center, because that was really the issue, is that lily pads are meant to have depth in the center. So from the center I would have these shadows almost pedaling out, creating a center, a dark center, that then spread out to the other edges of the lily pad. And then of course on top of that I added in the veins and any sort of like rim lighting, or even on the green ones I add this like bright yellow because I think it's quite nice. And then once I had one of every color, two of every color, I was just copying and pasting those. Don't tell anybody. It still took me hours, but I would not have survived if I was not copying and pasting some of the lily pads, I swear. If I had done this as a traditional painting, I don't even know what I would do with myself. It would take me months, like actual months of work to complete. So I'm fine with the fact that they're copied and pasted. And every single one that was copied and pasted was painted on top of to make sure that the shadows were proper. All of the veins were unique because they were on a separate layer, so I would just copy and paste the shading underneath and then paint in the veins. And so those all ended up being unique, as well as any of the rim lighting or final little detailed, colorful touches. There's like a different little bright color on each one. On the blue ones, it's like a cyan color. On the green ones, it's a pretty bright yellow. On some of the darker green ones, it's like a much brighter green, and I really think that helped. I was, again, being driven crazy by these lily pads, so I was using benchmarks to motivate myself. So every chunk of lily pads I did, I got to work on something different. So now I got to work on this other eyeball. The process for the eyeballs was actually pretty fun. They're more complex than they look from far away. They have some green and some pink in them. I did the vein on this one, the nerves on this one initially, and then I didn't like it. It felt a bit too much like a strand of hair. And I added a little bit more blood on that one than the other one. I do go back and add a little bit more blood on the one in her left hand. I did give some special care and attention to the lily pads that were actually on her body, like the ones on her arm or covering her dress, the one attached to her leg, because I felt like those were the ones that people might be closely examining. Some of the ones in the corner didn't get as much love and attention. I was really trying to not get too caught up in the details and focus on the areas that actually need the focus, which is always a struggle for me. I want to make everything as detailed as it possibly can be. But obviously, when you have limited time to make artwork, when you have limited body, I don't want to break my wrists illustrating 75, 80 lily pads. So I'm happy with how they turned out. I feel like they're homogeneous, but if you look at any one, you're not going to feel like it's too rushed or anything like that. That's the word I'm looking for. The dress was quite difficult. I don't think I necessarily ended up with exactly what I wanted from it. I would have liked for the dress to look more transparent. It does come out looking white or almost blue. I do try to make it look weighed down by the water by darkening it, but I don't know. I don't think I achieved translucency, which is obviously very difficult. It would have probably looked a little more translucent if I showed more of her leg underneath the fabric, but it's almost like risque if I go much higher with her legs at this point. So I had no idea what I was doing with this fabric. It frustrated me a lot. So I painted it and then I was like, it just doesn't look like fabric. So I went over with a soft brush and basically just smudged everything to a messy extent where it was like, this does not look good. I know it doesn't look good, but I need to smudge it all out because it's going to create this overall softness and it's going to, smudge up pieces that I don't want there, and then I can go over and paint it all in the end. So it did look really rough for a while, and then I went in and very carefully repainted everything with some sharper edges, some sharper lines. One of the things I really wanted to make sure that I achieved was keeping the light edge of each of the pieces of fabric, because I felt like that would really make it look three-dimensional, as if I had this bright edge along every single fold and curve. I feel like in the end it does look very good. I still don't feel like it looks like fabric. It's almost too hard. Like the edges are almost too hard. But again, I feel like as soon as I start to blend them, I feel like it's over blended and I no longer have this reality to it. It looks smudged, it looks fake, it looks messy. So it's something that I need to work on. I don't often paint fabric. I've done it once or twice. I really dislike it. It's not something that I enjoy, but the final product, I guess, turns out pretty good. I don't know. You guys will have to tell me what you think. Also, I don't know if you can hear my dog whining in the background. I'm trying to cut out as much as possible, but you know, she is what she is. Again, I did the same sort of thing I was doing with the lily pads. I would work on the dress until I literally couldn't anymore, and then I would step aside to work on something else. So I worked on these leaves, and more so than the lily pads, it was really important to me not to put too much focus into each of the leaves. I started out with this sort of look and I didn't like it, so I tried again and I didn't like it, and then eventually I was just like, it's too sparse, I need to fill it in with more leaves. And I really like how this looked. I got to add some small details with the like smaller leaves coming off the bushel and the veins of the leaves, and I really like that. I feel like they look like leaves without commanding too much attention, and I really like that. And then I was back to the dress again for more rendering. So yeah, genuinely, I spent so long on the dress as well. It was another thing that was really annoying to me, really frustrating to me, but it felt like such a large part of the painting that I couldn't just abandon it, you know? It had to be there. And I don't know, I feel like, again, it turned out pretty well, but not exactly my vision. Fabric is one of those things I think you actually have to do like intentional studies on, and I haven't done any, only because they're pretty time consuming. Maybe I could do some more videos about that, because the thing is, I have to focus a lot on getting finalized work done in order to have videos out every week. I'm trying to take some of the load off of that by doing some more videos about reading in my reading journal, which has been received very well, so thank you. So I'm trying to do some more of that, but also, would you guys want like some digital sketchbook stuff? I don't know. If you would want something like that, I mean, you can leave a comment below. I definitely want to do some more traditional sketchbook stuff, but that doesn't necessarily help me with painting studies. Except maybe it will, if I do them on actual paintings instead of digital paintings. So another thing I added in the background, which I really think added dimension and makes the water look like water, is I added these really small lily pads underneath the surface in all sorts of different colors and shapes, and I feel like they just make the water look deeper and more dimensional. I do really like this, and I did see it in a lot of other artwork depicting lily pads as these like very little simple ones, so I like that a lot. It was really important for me for the water to look like water, and I know we don't look like that yet, and it's partially because the only thing that's like quote-unquote in the water is her legs, but I really like how it turned out in the end, even though it does kind of destroy a lot of the work that I did with painting her skin. I shouldn't have painted the skin first. I didn't even think about it because it makes it more complicated in my brain, but it did take a long time. If you continue to hear Rory complaining, it's because she wants to go play in the bathtub. It's a brand new thing she's been doing where she wants to play with the water in the bathtub. So as soon as I finish recording this, I will let her play with the water in the bathtub, but she's being very complainy about it. But you can see I'm filling in more of these foliage, more of these leaves. I wasn't entirely happy with how saturated the blue was for the fabric and the dress. I do think I like it more now, but in my head I was like, it's too saturated, it's making the dress look blue, which it does. The dress does look blue. it's frustrating, but it's the best that I could do at the time, and I'm still very pleased with how it turned out. I still think that the fabric feels like it flows naturally from different tension points. A lot of the bunching feels real, and I do feel like I've captured some of the floating feeling of it with the, like, how it spreads out from her waist. The only other thing I think is kind of strange is the ruffles. I don't know exactly. I think they're across the waist, but it looked a little weird to me. I don't know. But the final touches I wanted to put on this was actually making things look like they were in the water. So obviously I made her arms look like they were a little more under the water. I added these sort of ripples to the edges of a lot of the lily pads and a lot of the leaves, and that sort of made them look like they were floating, obviously. I added a lot of ripples around where her arms and legs are coming out of the water. And I, again, added a little bit of a darker color around the edge of the dress to make it look wet and under the surface. And then I added this, like, ripple texture on top of the water, and I think it looks really good. I think I'm really happy with it. I had to figure out where exactly the boundaries for that were, but I think it looks really good. So with a little bit more blood, this is the final illustration. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope you like it. Let me know what you think. I might sell it on my shop, afterplagueart.myshopify.com. Let me know if you would buy a copy. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you want to see more from me, subscribe. Follow me on all my other social media. I am Afterplague pretty much everywhere: Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, Goodreads, and I am after_plague on Twitter. Check out my book in my shop. It's called Corruption. It's an illustrated collection of short stories, afterplagueart.myshopify.com. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope you survive this post-plague world.